get this next part of the conference. Okay. Well, thank you for returning here to talk a little bit about the book. So, as I mentioned, I came up with this idea long ago and then presented it to the coalition a couple years ago, and thankfully the board said, yes, Catherine, we like your idea, let's do it. And so I guess I'll first just ask you both a question, since we've heard your stories. What inspired you to want to participate in the book? Why share your story in this book?
Well,
go ahead.
Prior to this anthology, I wrote in a previous anthology that became an international best-selling author, and I wrote on a different topic. The title of the book was Family Ties, What Binds Us and Tears Us Apart. And so the book was an amazing tool and resource that other people, were able to use and apply to their, their personal circumstance or their personal family ties story. And everyone has different families. Sometimes it's blood family. Sometimes, for me, it was my pageant family. And so that's a very, broad category. And so when I went through being bullied in the workplace and the experiences that came along with that, and then being able to build a successful claim against my employer, when I was researching the topic, and no one was talking about workplace bullying back in 2014, 2015. I mean, I researched it on social media, and there just was no conversation really around it. And that horrified me. There were grown adults, women like, the three of us, wives, mothers, sisters, daughters, sons, husbands, that were committing suicide because they were being bullied in the workplace. And I was horrified at that. And so I wanted to give back. I wanted to share my personal experience because I understand the power of real live personal testimonies and sharing those with other people in an effort to empower them and then encourage them. I wanted to save lives. I wanted people in the workplace who were targets of workplace bullying to know that there were tools and resources, that they did have choices. And I felt obligated, and I felt called to really, partner with you on the project. So that was my purpose and intention of doing it.
All right, thank you. What about you, Lorraine?
Well, I think in part I want to say that one of the tools I didn't get to talk about was writing, angry letters and self-affirming letters, and writing about the experience is a healing tool. So I personally found it healing to write about my experiences. In my piece, I start out talking about a power dream I had, a real dream, about 6 months after I left. And I actually have written a number of blog posts about this. One was called The Injury of Mobbing in the Workplace, and some other ones, because I'm on a mission to get the word out. And I actually, one of the first classes I taught at Sonoma State was a 2-day class on, it's called Dealing with Bullying Behavior from the Schoolyard to the Boardroom. And because people don't know this information and they need it, whether I've done assemblies for middle school students and spoken at high schools and done classes for, CEU classes for healthcare professionals, because people feel alone, and I think it's so important they know they're not. And I talked about being bullied in my workplace, and there was a culture of bullying there. I was not the only person. My closest colleague, who was an Afro-Caribbean woman, all she had to do was walk in the room and the bullying behaviors started, because there was so much prejudice, and many other people there. So I knew that it was widespread because I witnessed it even in my small corner of the world. So I was delighted when you asked me to do the book. And just one more thing I wanted to say is I'm actually grateful it took 8 years because what happened for me is I realized how much healing I'd continued to do during these 8 years, and it made me feel even more grateful for my experiences and grateful for this opportunity.
Cool. And to your point about writing being therapeutic, I discovered the phrase workplace bullying while I was in grad school writing a paper for a class. And so my writing at that time was obviously all around writing these research, college articles or essays, and that was very therapeutic for me to write in that way and sort of, I guess I was taking a step back from the emotions that went into it and had to write these very academic papers where I'm citing academic research and just hearing, I'm just having an epiphany right now as I'm saying this. I think taking a step back from the emotions and writing about bullying as a clinical thing, which is kind of what Bob Sutton was talking about earlier too, that helped me. And it really, the education really truly helped me to realize that there was 35 years of academic research on this topic from around the world, and I wasn't alone, was helpful. Um, so another question I have for you, and I'll just preface it by saying, one of the things that I see online that concerns me is people who have been bullied at work, and of course they're emotional, there's a lot of things going on with them. As we all can attest and know, it's very damaging to be bullied at work. I'm concerned that a lot of times what I see online is people essentially saying, I was bullied, my life is over, and yours is too. And really, I feel like some people are sort of dragging others down with them. And so this book is about reframing this conversation, and let's talk about bullying as an empowering kind of a thing. We've all been beat down, and now we can come back and look at ourselves in a different way. So my question is, what do you see different in yourself now that, how have you grown since your bullying situation? Where are you now compared to where you were then?
Well, I'll jump in. I was recently contacted through my website by a man who's a mediator. He's also a gay man of color. And he said that he called me a unicorn because he said that he had never met someone who'd been through my experience who was as full of life and joyous as I am. And a woman I coached recently who had just left a bullying workplace and was very fearful about finding another job, I realized she actually didn't want very many of my skills. She just wanted to sit and breathe with someone who had been through it and survived. So I think partly how I address this is I'm so grateful for what I've learned and how I've grown, and I can model that for other people. And for me personally, as I said, I mean, I do not know that I would have found this field without the horrific experiences
All right.
that I had. I was praying, get me out of here, show me a new vision, and I found a program on conflict resolution and started taking it and was a volunteer mediator and started writing and started teaching. And I have to say that if the bullying hadn't happened, I might still be at that college, which wouldn't be a tragedy, but what I'm doing now is so much more what I'm meant to do. And I want to add one more thing, which is this is very ironic, but I taught a class on bullying for 3 years at a large medical center for the employees. And right after the election, a Trump supporter took exception to something I said in class, and I got fired from teaching a class about bullying. And the way I dealt with it was so different from what had happened to me through 2000 to 2009. I made an appointment with HR. I stood up for myself. I got to speak my truth. They ended up, they just were willing to believe the lies this one student was telling about me, but it didn't throw me nearly as much. And that's a measure of my inner growth and my self-love and belief in myself and the value of what I was bringing to these students who were being bullied in their various departments at the hospital.
Yeah, wow. Wow, what a story. Kabay, what about you? What didn't see that coming. What about you? What's different about you now than, or how have you grown?
Well, when I was um, initially bullied, I mean, I was in a very dark place. Lorraine, you shared that you had this kind of violent vision of, killing somebody. And I, had a vision of throwing my bully out of the window off the 22nd floor of the Bank of America Tower in Seattle. And I was very, very isolated. I was, wanting to go be with my mom in heaven, and was really having some really, really dark thoughts, which is just not who I am. And, just feelings of hopelessness, and, like life was over. And I really felt that my career was being stolen from me. I'm a legal professional. I have a degree. I'm very passionate about helping people in the legal field because it is so scary for so many people. And I felt like my career was being, robbed from me, stolen. And I, put on a beautiful event and broke the silence around workplace bullying in Seattle. And have had so many people reach out to me that are just afraid to talk. They're afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to speak about it, especially publicly, for fear of, losing their job. And, I was able to come out of that environment and, really heal myself and, turn it into this great platform as a public figure. And when I found myself in the environment again, I was so empowered, and I felt so powerful because I was like, oh yeah, okay, you guys want to bully me? All right, well, I got something for you.
I can't imagine you saying that at all.
I was so empowered, and I felt so powerful. And although, the situation, it didn't make the situation easy to go through, but I was able to maintain my personal power through the situation, and it became hilarious to me. I was able to laugh at, like, and I found myself so many times saying, like, you're so silly. This is so, like, you just have no idea who you're dealing with. You really don't. And so, going through the experience, and, anyone that's listening, or listens to this at a later time, anyone that's a target, you're going to get through it. You've got to build the support system, and that's what I did. You've got to build a support system. You have to implement tools and resources that help you maintain your personal power. And so that's what happened to me. That was a transformation for me. I would tell my story, like I'm being bullied in the workplace, and people would be like, who is bullying you? Really? Like, that's unbelievable. And they're like, it has to be a woman, because no man would bully Miss Kamei. And of course it was a woman, but I really, really learned about my personal power. It also gave me a voice. Before I reached out to NWBC, Catherine, when I decided I wanted to, turn this into a platform, I actually took some time, and I was really concerned about my employability once I did speak publicly. And I was like, this is my career, I've invested in education, et cetera, and, this may affect my employability. And I thought, you know what, if there is an employer out there that does not want to employ me because they're afraid I'm going to, speak out about workplace bullying, well, I certainly don't want to go work for them. It also helped me launch my own business and, my own consulting business. And it really made me realize that, it's not the job that made me, like Lorraine had mentioned in our conference this week with ACR, that, so many people are emotionally attached and identify themselves with their job or their position. Well, everybody, I'm here to tell you that job does not make us. We make that job.
Right.
So that's how I transformed.
Awesome. Well, I'll share a little bit about my growth experience as well, and then I'll get one more question to you ladies. So, as I went through this process of grad school, and I'm reading about and researching and writing about bullying and then living it every day, and my work was just so affected, and I had gone from being this really high performer into being somebody who was always late. I left early, and I was very distracted. I really wasn't doing anything anymore, and I was kind of in this point where it was like, I'm just going to get through grad school, and then I'll quit, and then I'll have my degree and I can go and get another job. And my boss, being as conflict avoidant as he was, hence allowing this bully to act that way, never spoke to me about my lack of performance, and it got really bad. It was really, really bad, admittedly. And he finally shows up in my office one morning and he just says, you know, "What's up, Catherine?" And I burst into tears and I said, "I hate working here. I hate this person. I hate that you won't speak up." And all of a sudden I was giving a 30-day notice, like, I gotta go. Clearly I can't do this anymore. And he said, "If you're that unhappy, you should leave now." And he watched me pack my stuff in my office and walk out, as I had done as the HR person when I'd let people go. Now I was that person. But I gotta say, on the way home, I can distinctly remember driving through Hillcrest, which is a very colorful part of town. It's a beautiful part of San Diego, and the colors literally were brighter on the buildings, and the flags were brighter, and literally this like haze came up off of my face, and I didn't even know it was there, and I was literally living in a black cloud. I'm not talking metaphorically here. Literally, I was looking at the world through a black cloud that I didn't know. And so I always tell people, if you have to quit, then that's what you got to do, because I promise you, you'll figure it out. You're resilient. And so anyway, I went on to start Civility Partners, and doing this has been very therapeutic for me. I still carry a lot of emotions. My two assistants can attest that sometimes I cry after I get off the phone. You know, HR professionals will call me, for example, and ask for help, and they can't get their leaders to approve, you know, working with me to solve the bullying, and it makes me cry. I cry for all those people that work there who have a leader who doesn't think bullying's a thing. So we've got to continue to push the conversation forward. So one last question for you. We just have, give me a 1-minute answer, each of you. So the book is all about advice. So the way the book is structured is each author, all 23 of us, we've submitted our story. We'll share our story with you, but the story is about empowerment and how we've grown. And then we've all offered you some advice as people who have been bullied ourselves. So I'll give each of you 1 minute. What's one piece of advice that you've offered up in the book as part of your story?
I will say documentation.
Okay.
Documentation. Documenting, you know, at the end of your day, you should, you know, go in and document a recap. And you want to document the facts only. It's very hard to remove our emotions out of what's happening to us because we're hurt, we're angry, we're mad. So we have to document only the facts. When you're filing a claim or building a legal claim, the judge and the jury only want the facts, and facts are hard to dispute.
Yeah.
So documentation, factual documentation, and removing the emotional attachment to what's going on, and thinking like an attorney, basically, and documenting only the facts. Documentation is vital. Date, time, stamp, who was there, what was said. Factual only.
Okay, perfect. Lorraine, what about you?
What I would say, there's a lot I could say, but what I'm going to say is love yourself, get support, and be willing to walk away. Because you're more important than any job. I walked away from tenure and I have no regrets. Your soul, your heart's well-being, your quality of life are much more important than any job. And get an exit strategy. Whatever your fears or whatever's holding you back, be willing to leave, because sometimes it's the healthiest, sanest thing you can do. And the best revenge on these horrible people is living a good life.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So good.
And
so
I'll
good.
just say the one piece of advice that I offered that really worked for me, some people find God or find spirituality. I found personal development, and I read everything, Zig Ziglar, Napoleon Hill, all of those books about personal growth, and that really is what got me through it, was my version of finding a God. And so, you know, those personal development people out there, Tony Robbins of the world, all of those people, they talk about resilience and bouncing back, and you can be anything you want to be and do what you want to do, and that was really useful for me. So we've got to close. We're running a little over time, but just to share how to get a hold of the book. So interestingly, my business has been booming since November of last year, and you may guess why that is. And so the book has, it's been a process to try to juggle everything going on. So we don't have the book ready for you today. I wish we could say we did, but the publisher has the book. They're working on the cover. They're putting it together for us. If you want a pre-sale copy, please email Rebecca, who you met earlier, and she will get you on a list. And the goal is once we understand a little bit more about when the book is going to be out, Kamei will be helping us make sure that we're a #1 bestseller on Amazon. So those pre-sales actually help us accomplish that goal of being #1, because then we can buy all of these copies at one time on one day, and that's how you get to be an Amazon bestseller. So thank you for Kamei, thank you to Kamei for your story, but also everything you've done to help with the book. Kamei helped find that picture that's going to be on the cover, and she's been really helping marketing. So thank you, and thank you, Lorraine, for contributing your story and chatting with me today. All right.